when you look at carnivores, they can open their mouths real wide because obviously you have to run up and grab something in order to wrestle it to the ground. So they have reduced facial muscles that allow them to open their mouths very wide and grab onto prey. The temporalis muscle, which is the muscle that sits on the top of the head, is gigantic, and it's the main muscle operating their lower jaw. And that's important because it basically keeps that lower jaw stuck in the socket so that when they grab onto something, their jaw isn't dislocated, because there are no ENT surgeons on the savannah. You dislocate your jaw, your history.
You know, with drugs and stents and with bypasses, there's mortality. We've talked about it. And there's morbidity with those procedures: heart attacks, infections, death. The expense is enormous. We have over $250 billion in the cardiology budget. And the sad thing is, with those procedures, there's an increasing failure rate with the passage of time.
And let me give an example of John here. His real name is John Pelikowski. I have permission to use his real name. He's a lovely man who's now 84 years old. But he first saw me 15 years ago when he was 69, and at that point he was on 3 medications for his high blood pressure. But while he was on those 3 medications for his high blood pressure and nitrates to prevent his chest pain, because they told him he needed urgent angioplasty, which he didn't have, by the way, while he was on those 3 medications plus nitrates to lower his blood pressure, his initial blood pressure reading was 160, his systolic number, on the 3 medications. And over that first 3 or 4 months, when he lost 40 or 50 pounds and he came off the blood pressure medications, his blood pressure came down to the normal range on less medication, his chest pains went away. His cardiologist actually said to him, "You're doing so well, just follow Dr. Furman's advice, we'll cancel your angioplasty." Shocker of all shockers, he actually agreed and let him and didn't give me an argument like most cardiologists do. But in any case, John made a complete recovery. This is now, I followed him for 15 years, and he's been in excellent health and no medication. His cholesterol, his total cholesterol is 142. This should say LDL. His LDL cholesterol is 86.
What happened is that in last December, when those famous drug-eluting stents began to mysteriously clot off, there was a rethink. And the rethink was attended by Johnson & Johnson and Boston Scientific. Why? Because they have, the stent industry is $6 billion. Do you think industry has a lot to do with how we treat disease? We as a profession have sort of lost it. We are now so involved with selling sickness. We make fortunes when people are sick. What happened to prevention?
Think of the millions of American kids today who are really overweight and who are pre-diabetic or even developing diabetes at early ages, whose cardiovascular systems are already plugging up because of the bad fats they're eating, because of the polluted diet they're eating. And nobody is saying to the parents who are feeding them nothing but Twinkies and hamburgers, you know, you're doing wrong. But if I look at the evil that are done by misguided vegan parents, and there is some, and the evil that's done by people who are doing what is the cultural norm, that's what really scares me. That's where I think our work needs to be.
Their teeth clearly are designed for ripping, tearing, and cutting. They do not chew their food. Say it with me. They do not chew their food. You know, your mom used to always say, "Take your time and chew your food." At least my mother did. Their mother never says that because they don't chew. They just rip off a hunk of flesh and swallow it. No need to chew. The jaw, as a result, has minimal side-to-side motion and doesn't move backwards and forwards. Their saliva has no enzymes in it because the stuff that they're eating is protein and fat. If they released enzymes that digest protein and fat into their mouth, they wouldn't have a mouth for very long.
I mentioned exercise is important, and my exercise program that I recommend for people is 5 to 6 days a week, 45 to 60 minutes in your target heart zone. And people wonder, well, how do I determine my target heart zone? Easy to do. Use the talk test, okay? If you can carry on a conversation but you'd rather not while you're exercising, then you're in your target heart zone. If you're breathless and you can't put a sentence together, you've crossed over into anaerobic exercise. You're not going to last very long anyway. And if it's as easy for you to talk as it is right now to me, then you're not working hard enough. And and there's scientific evidence to prove that that's just as reliable as wearing heart rate monitors and that sort of thing. We like to see people do a combination of aerobic exercise, strength training, and flexibility. Some type of yoga is wonderful. Progression is important. Intensity should increase, and be prepared to be uncomfortable. I mean, I love these things that say that this no pain, no gain thing is just ridiculous. You take somebody like me who spent 18 years of their adult life sitting, put me in a gym for the first day, and do you think it's going to be fun? Absolutely not. It was not fun. I hated it. And I tell everybody when they start an exercise program, you're going to hate it until you like it. Okay? Some of how long you're going to hate it depends upon your mental attitude going into it, and the self-talk that you engage in about exercise. But the reality is you simply cannot be a healthy person without it. Human beings were designed for movement, and it wasn't all that long ago from an evolutionary standpoint. We were burning up 9,000 calories a day moving around just to survive. So sitting, we are not adapted as humans for sitting.
But then I wanted to do something that really touched me, and that would be something new. And I thought, I want to write about farm animals. Because if I've seen that wild animals have emotions, if cats have emotions, if dogs have emotions, I couldn't discover an animal that didn't have emotions. Wouldn't that also be true of pigs and ducks and geese and sheep and cows and goats and the animals that are on farms? And I looked, and there was nothing written about that. Farm animal emotion was virgin territory. So I persuaded my publisher that we've got another giant bestseller coming, and I'm going to write it. And I went around the world, in the United States, in Europe, and Australia and New Zealand, interviewing farmers and looking at farm animals, and wrote a book called The Pig Who Sang to the Moon. And that was a deeply unpopular book. I think it sold only copies directly to my immediate family. Did not sell, does not sell, will not sell. And that interests me. Why is it that this book will not sell? The writing's the same. It's more passionate, if anything. It's a fascinating topic, and it affects anybody who eats animals, right? And that was the clue, I think.
This came out last year by a big supermarket chain in the Northeast. Some of you may name them. I don't want to name them. Hannaford Brothers. Okay, that's who it was. They evaluated all the food in their supermarket, 27,000 products. And what they did is they created a scale, all right? And you got more stars for the more vitamins, minerals, fiber, and whole grains, and you got less stars for saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, salt, and sugar. And you got either 1, 2, or 3 stars based on how well you did. And they said that if a product had no nutritional value, they gave it 0 stars. So here's the results. There they go, 94% of produce, 55% of cereals, 43% of seafood, 24% of meat, 18% of dairy, 12% of soups, 8% of deli, 5% of bakery, got at least 1 star. So if you just do generic math without doing statistical math, that means 32% of food in each section got at least 1 star. And they came out with big press releases about this on how you can now come there and they'll help you shop. I thought it was spin, so I had to do a little spin myself. So I wrote an article, and I said, you have to understand what they're really saying. First off, you got to get rid of the produce, because that's not fair, right? I mean, we all know apples are going to pass. So let's recount. We do recounts down in Florida, okay? So if you take the produce out, that means only 24% of the food in each section got at least 1 star, which, if you turn it around, means that this company is admitting that 70%, that when you walk out of the produce section, 76% of the food in each section has no nutritional value by their own admittance.
But here's the interesting thing about John, and here's the point I want to make. Because as John was in my office He comes back in my office a few months ago. One of the researchers from the National Institute of Health is staying with me that week and watching me work with patients all week. And in walks John, and myself, and sitting next to me, this researcher from the National Institute of Health, we're flipping through John's chart and going back for 15 years. And we noticed that this guy's seen me every year for 15 years straight. And for the last 14 years, he's been on no medication. And every year that I've seen him, his systolic blood pressure got lower and lower and lower as he got older. The longer he stayed on this diet, the better his blood pressure dropped. The interesting thing is that, I've said this before, is that water runs off a cliff in a waterfall and hits a rock. And after 20,000 years, the rock splits in two. But the rock didn't age, the water hit it. That your blood pressure does not raise with aging, and your cholesterol does not rise with aging. It rises because you incur the causes of disease. They hit you week after week, month after month, year after year, just like the water hit that rock. And in John's case, it was a wonderful example that his systolic blood pressure came down with no medications from 135 to 125 to 120 to 110 to 100 to 90, that his systolic blood pressure, little by little, came down every single year. So now, at the age of 84, his resting blood pressure with no medication is 90 over 70, 95 over 65, 100 over 80, runs in that range on no medication. Whereas when he first came to see me, don't forget, 4 medications lower blood pressure, his systolic was 160.
Now, this is in the back of the Harvard Heart Letter. This is a fascinating question. On the back of the Harvard Heart Letter, patients will write in questions to the editors. This gentleman happened to be 75 years of age. 10 years earlier, he'd had a coronary artery bypass operation. And as he said here, I've done everything right since they've asked me to do that. Now I'm told I need another operation. How come? And the answer from the editor of the Harvard Heart Letter was, you should congratulate yourself. The best that can be hoped for in this disease is to slow the rate of progression. Well, I, quite frankly, respectively disagree.
We're not really here to consume. It's not I own, therefore I am, or I shop, therefore I am, or what a ridiculous distortion of the human quest, the human condition. That is. But superficially, in our society, that has a lot of power. So, in terms of consumption, I want to eat simply so others can simply eat, to sort of paraphrase Gandhi. And I want to eat what's healthy for me, what enables my cells to thrive and rejoice, and my emotions to be serene and clear, so that I have the best chance to live a long, healthy life that is coherent with the deep needs of my spirit for this lifetime.
Carnivores have extremely powerful jaws. Their jaws are capable, and this allows them, again, to wrestle animals weighing half ton or more to the ground, dismember them, and crush their bones. If you look at estimated bite forces, dogs have a bite force of 300 to 450 pounds per square inch. Wolves, it's more than 500 pounds per square inch. The jaguar has been estimated, at around 700. Lions and tigers, 800 to 900. Hyenas are greater than 1,000. By contrast, we can barely muster 135 to 150 pounds per square inch, because obviously we shouldn't be trying to crush bones.
Lack of time is not an excuse. I love this one when people say, I really would like to exercise, but I just don't have the time. People need to get their priorities in order. And I remember a dialogue I had with a guy who he and his wife were consulting with me. And he said, I respect what you say, and I agree that you're right, but you don't understand. We live 45 miles outside of town, and for us to buy food at the health food store and for us to exercise and go to the gym and the things you're telling us to do, it's 45 minutes to go one way. I said, okay, I'll grant you that's a pain in the butt to a certain extent, but if your wife had breast cancer, would she say, well, it's 45 minutes to go get treatment, and so to heck with it, I think I'll just die? No. Okay, well, if you're going to spend 45 minutes to get treatment, why wouldn't you spend 45 minutes to prevent the disease that requires the treatment? Okay, it comes back to what I said earlier. You spend the same amount of time and money, it's a question of how you invest it.
And I think that being at an event like this, it can really help you. And I thank Sabrina, I thank Jeff, and I thank all the staff who've helped make this possible, and the other speakers who are here, and you for coming, and you for being present while you're here, because there's going to be some jewels that you'll pick up. If you keep listening to your heart, you'll know.